So were you always in school in Hinsdale, or did you go to the Rock
No.
Creek School?
I went to, I went to the Knott Miller School to begin with till I was in the 3rd grade. And
When
then
did you start? How
I-
old were you?
I was 4 when I started.
And where was that?
That was about, have you ever been out to our homestead?
Probably
Bridge.
not. Probably not.
You've seen Birch Road as you
Mm-hmm.
come, and you go north about, I don't know how many miles.
So it was not far from home.
It
The
was
school.
about 1.5 miles from home, the school was. And
And was
went-
it uphill both ways?
No, but there was a big hill. That's how come I got to start the school when I was 4, because my sister was 6 the first day of September, and I wouldn't have been 5 until the 18th of October. And I remember the teacher stopping by our house because he lived 6 miles the other direction. And he and Mom were talking, and he said, and I could go down to the creek and follow the creek up till I could scootle up over the hill, and then they couldn't see me. So anyway, he said, yes, he'd take me as long as I didn't, and I can't remember now whether the word was disturb or annoy, but the other kids. And I recall thinking, what in the world does that big word mean? I did not know what it meant. And, but anyway, I
But
went.
you weren't supposed to do it, whatever it was.
Yes, and I went. Oh.
So
And
you-
this is the school, by the way.
Oh,
And that is taken the first Sunday.
this is the Rock Creek School.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
And this was my mother when she came to teach it.
Oh, that's neat. How old was she?
What did I say, about 23?
About your age then.
Yeah, I just turned 23 this year.
Yep.
And this was a picture of Vicky. When we were talking the other day, I said something about a scholarship, and she said, I never got a scholarship.
And you proved her wrong.
And I said, you did too.
Okay, so you went to, what did you call it again? The
Not Miller School.
Knott Miller School until you were in
Uh-huh.
3rd grade?
Until I was in the 3rd grade. And then I didn't go to school till I was in May of the 6th grade. We didn't go to school.
Did they close that school down? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they did. And then I went to the Richter School, and that was 6 miles away or thereabouts. And most of the time, my brother drove, and he was in higher grades than we were. And then when it came winter time, the teacher was staying at the school, and she asked if we wanted to, we could stay at the school with her.
Oh.
And we did. And I know that we had a bed out in the classroom, and she did in the wintertime, and we had a folding bed that slid underneath her bed.
Mm-hmm.
And on Friday nights, we went home and that.
And the rest of the week you just
And-
lived at the school.
And then when we were in the 7th grade, you can take this in here, when we were in the 7th grade, then is when we started coming to town. And the first year, I missed out my sis got pneumonia at the first of the year. And of course, Mom didn't want me to be younger and ahead of her in school.
Oh.
So I got to stay home too. And then we went back till we were in the 8th grade then, and of course when that school started again.
And that was, and you stayed in town at the motel at that time?
Yes, we
At the
did.
dorm?
At the dorm. And then when we hauled a shack into town, and it was put where Galtz live now.
Mm.
And we lived in that then till I was I finished school. I mean, I finished my junior year.
Right. So did everybody come to town and live there, or just you kids that were going to school lived there?
Just us kids.
Just you kids. There were, did you say there were 3 of you?
No,
Older
just
brother?
two of us. He
Just the two
didn't
of
go any further than the 8th
Oh,
grade.
okay.
Because, and you know, at school, I remember the teacher asking, or superintendent, I should say, asking about kids going on to college. And he said, how many of you are assured of going on to college at this point? There was one girl raised her hand, Bessie Copenhaver.
Wow.
And to my knowledge, she didn't go.
She didn't go either, huh?
No.
Was not the thing to do, was to go to college at that point.
Well, finances were such that we didn't know if,
It just wasn't possible.
yes, it just was one of those things
Yep.
that, yeah, and like I said, or did I say, Mom homesteaded in, maybe it was maybe as late as 1915, I'm not sure. But anyway, they're still there. The family is still there on the homestead.
That's neat.
So that's well over 100 years too.
Yeah.
And our house burned when I was 2. And I might add this, it was not George's immediate family that took us in, but George's, they were Phillipses that took us in anyway, when the house burned. But of course, my father, they moved into an old granary that was on a place, another place there. And we finally moved into that same old granary because, of course, he had to stay and take care of the livestock.
Right.
Even though it was summertime, they needed water and what have you.
Right.
And
So you lived with the Phillipses until you all moved into the granary.
and of course, I don't know how long that was
Yeah.
because I don't. Oh, and that picture over there on the wall belonged to people that we stayed with, Blanche and Blanche and John Phillips. And when they left and moved back to Iowa, they gave Mother that picture, and I was to have it because I was named after her.
Oh, cool.
And it's a little different. I mean, it isn't a painting, but the frame is different.
That's neat.
That's a very nice picture. I kind of like the frame with the fence built into it.
Well, is a little different,
Yeah.
I think.
Is that a silo in the background or a windmill?
Windmill, I think. I think it's a kind of a Dutch picture.
Yeah. It looked like a silo, but it kind of looks like it has something off the side of it.
And of course, our neighbors were fairly close to begin with. And then in about the 30s, they started to thin out. You know, they lived, on every half section, you know. And then, next thing you knew, some of them were gone, some were gone,
Yeah.
some were gone, until finally it got to be that our closest neighbors were, well, let's see. Toward the last, I guess the Sherrys, Jim Sherrys, and the Weeseys probably were the closest. And they were each 3 miles away.
Which seems pretty close now, but at the time you had lots of neighbors that were closer.
Oh, yes, yes.
You didn't mention what your mother did with you kids when your house burned.
When what? When the house burned?
Yes.
Well, she had us kids out to the toilet when she looked back and saw smoke coming from the house.
Oh no, so none of you were in the house. That's good.
No, none of us were in the house.
What?
She locked them in.
Oh, locked him in the
And-
outhouse?
and she left
So
us
she
in
knew
the-
where they were.
That's a good
And
idea.
she locked us in the outhouse. And Earl was at the school, and they could see our house burning from the school.
Oh.
And a Chester lady was teaching the school, and she let all the kids out so that they could make a trip over as fast as they could to see if they could help.
Yeah.
And Earl said, I remember her reaching over and hugging me. She's the teacher.
So the house burned down. You went to live with neighbors, and then you moved into the granary. And then what happened?
We lived in the granary for years and years and years, although they did add on to it, was still a granary.
The granary just became the house.
That's right.
That's kind of neat. I'd be okay with living in a granary.
Well, there's a lot of people that are converting all these round grain bins into houses now.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Is that
true.
right?
The metal ones?
You just got to insulate them.
And what, you know,
I remember when Sid and Margie built their new house.
Yes.
And they went and lived in the barn, and I just thought, that's so cool. That would just be the neatest thing ever, to go live in the barn. That would be so neat. I remember going to visit them, and they had a floor lamp and their recliner sitting there, and I was like, that is just neat.
No, Sid was in my class.
Okay, yeah.
And Grace.
Oh, okay. I have met Grace. Grace actually backed into my van a few years ago here.
Oh,
A friend of mine says,
Was that the first meeting?
yes, that was the first time I met her.
Lord.
Yep. A friend of mine says, that lady just backed into your van, put a big old dent in it. I went, oh no. So I ran up to her door and I said, excuse me, but did you know that you just hit my van? I did. I said, yeah, there's a big dent in it. So she gets out of her car and we go around to look. Well, it was, my bumper was plastic, and by the time we walked back over there, the dent had popped right out. So I was like,
Isn't
okay,
that
never
something?
mind. I guess you didn't hurt anything, so don't worry about
Wow.
it. So that was my meeting of Grace Simonson.
well. And then, one summer, on the 26th of July, I don't remember what year it was, but I remember the day, and Mom was canning peas, and I was sitting out in the porch, kind of scraping potatoes for going to have lunch. And I glanced at the clock, and it was 3 minutes to 12. And the next thing I knew, I heard this terrible roar, and Mom had me by the arm and got me into the house. And it was terrible roar. And I didn't know that it was, I don't know if you call it a cyclone or tornado or whatever you call it. And the hail was just coming down like you wouldn't believe. And Mom put us down cellar, and she started to come down too, but she glanced back and saw the stove was smoking. So she grabbed the water bucket and put the fire out. And by that time, we're yelling, water's running in on us.
Oh no.
Yes. And so she waited just a few minutes and got us up. But of course, we didn't know that the reason the stove was smoking was because the roof of the porch was gone, and the roof was gone, and when it went, it knocked the chimney off. And of course, we find that out later. But Earl and Dad were in town that day, and I can still see, we had a woven wire fence around the garden, and it was about 4 feet high. It was higher than usual because we didn't want the cows reaching over the top of it. And it was just all bowed out and full of hail. About 3 feet up on it, and other debris, you know. And anyway, when we got outside, and of course water was running all over the floor. It was a couple inches deep in the kitchen. And when we got outside, of course, then we realized that the porch roof was gone. But the crazy part was the door was still shut.
No roof. But the
No
door was
roof, but the door was shut. And no roof on the. I don't know how much of the house roof was gone, but I know all the rubberite or shingles or whatever was on it, that was gone.
Wow.
And when we got out and looked, Mary and I had a little, good-sized, I should say, bunkhouse. And I can still see our it was gone entirely. The floor was there, but it was gone, and there was our bedding floating out in the yard.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, and I might add that we made ice cream 3 days later with that hail that was caught in the fence.
You gotta have a silver lining to it
When
somehow.
life gives you hail, make ice cream.
Yes, and of course there wasn't a thing left as far as the garden or crops were concerned or anything, you know. I remember how thoughtful the neighbors were that the farm goshes, I remember they brought over a gunny sack full of watermelons.
Oh.
But of course, we were quite fascinated with the watermelons. I'm sure that there was other things they brought too.
Right, but that's definitely what you remember.
That's the thing that I remember, yes. And,
So that was before the house burned down. So that was
no,
no, that was
This
this was the
long.
granary house.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Yep, it is. And when Earl and Dad, and you couldn't tell where it didn't do any good to put on overshoes because the water was,
Taller than your overshoes.
yes, taller than, and of course there was so much leaves and debris on top of it floating that you couldn't tell how deep the water was or where you were going or anything.
Yeah.
And
What a mess.
they didn't know that there had been any problem. Earl and Dad didn't until they went or very close to home, and I suppose a mile, and the schoolhouse's roof was floating down the coulee,
Oh, jeez.
and the old Mount Miller School was there was
That was
nothing
gone.
there.
That was quite a storm. But it must not have gone. Must not have been too widespread if it didn't get the neighbors' watermelons.
And of course the neighbors, when I say farm goshes, they lived down here on Rock Creek.
Oh.
And so it was several miles away that they lived. Yes.
Yeah, I can't imagine. We don't like it when we get a storm like that now, when it doesn't take the roof off of our house. Or
Exactly.
it might damage the crops, so we don't quite get as much as we wanted. But at that time, that was everything.
Yes, that was. And of course,
And even if you had a root cellar full of vegetables, it was probably flooded.
and at that point, we never had one. They've built one since, and I don't even know that they use it. But they have built a root cellar since, of course. But
That's another thing I think of when I think of SIDS is their root cellar. I was always quite fascinated with their root cellar. We had the basement of our house, which was pretty much a root cellar.
Yeah, right.
I loved the way it smelled because it was just dirt.
Earthy.
Yep, it just smelled like
and you
dirt.
know, there was so many things back then. You had a smokehouse so that when you butchered pigs and that, and you smoked the hams and things like that. And I remember, I don't know what I know they had some sawhorses out there and covered it over with, I don't know what, lumber of some kind. And I know the neighbors used to come and they'd cut up pigs and get the lard ready for whatever it was, or whatever they did with it, because you had to render it, of course. And the neighbors did have a lard press. Have you ever seen a lard press?
Mm-mm.
Well, it was about so big around, and it had a plate that went down on this thing, and you screwed the thing at the top, and it squeezed lard out, and it had a deal on the bottom that
Collected it.
collected it, and had a little spout that it ran out of, and
Now, was the lard heated, or was the lard just off the pig and you threw it in this thing and pressed it?
you know, I'm sure that it was processed first, and then put in there like the cracklings and that. I think, but I was so young I don't.
It wasn't your
remember.
job.
No, it wasn't.
Where is that breast? 3 weeks ago when I was rendering lard.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
it
it would
was.
have been handy, huh?
Yeah.